What you eating? Are you eating rices? She is down here and I am sorta kind of on daddy duty. You guys know how this works. You gotta multitask or try your best. And us guys usually aren't that good at it. So I've got a game up here and I did this intentionally. I just kind of let it run in the background because, well, we've got an overheating problem with specifically this rig right here, which you might remember from an earlier video. Now, this is not in the ideal spot. Ideally, you'd want to have this like sitting upright somewhere where it's unimpeded airflow-wise, but it's kind of tucked into the recess of this little media center thing. And as a result, it overheats. So you'll see the warning message we get in Corsair IQ software is overheating. The device is working in failsafe mode. Well, that's not good. So I pulled up the software just so we could look at temperatures here. The CPU actually is doing okay, and I've got this massively undervolted, so it's not running at its full potential just because, again, of the situation we're in here. I knew that going into it. What I did not expect was that the coolant temps were still going to be dangerously high, around 60 degrees Celsius. I would really be worried here, and it's getting pretty darn close to that, which is throwing off the sensors in the software. But the other big issue is our graphics card. What on earth is our 6800 XT doing at 99 or 100 degrees Celsius under load? This is not good. We've got a problem. So in this video, we're gonna try to figure out how to fix these things. Yeah, the overheating graphics card issue and the super hot coolant issue. This might involve some cleaning. This might involve some repasting. I don't really know. This might involve some undervolting. I'm gonna try to undervolt the 6800 XT. Maybe we'll just swap graphics cards. We'll try it all in this video. Are you ready? Stay with me. Introducing Kioxia's new XG8 series NVMe SSDs featuring 5th generation BiCS Flash 3D TLC memory and PCIe 4.0 compatibility. With capacities up to 4 terabytes and support for optional security features like TCG Pyrite and Opal, Kioxia drives are perfect for your next desktop, server, or workstation. Sequential reads and writes reach up to 7,000 and 5,800 megabytes per second respectively and are suited for ultra-fast program, OS, and VM load times, bundled with peace of mind warranties and at affordable price points. Kioxia's comprehensive PCIe 4 SSD portfolio continues to grow, with products offered for a wide range of applications. Check them out, including their new XG8 drives, by clicking the link below. So just to recap, here are some of the things I've done already to try and mitigate this issue. You can see our CPU temperatures since a few minutes ago have actually increased by about 4 or 5 degrees on account of this super hot fluid. I have first and foremost, again, like I said earlier, undervolted the CPU. That has kept temps relatively in check, but obviously that's still a big problem. The second thing I've done is taken out the little bronze goldish mesh filter at the front of this case. Now I thought, trying to do this with one hand, I thought that this would massively drop graphics card temperatures because you can see, I mean, it's just going through this like mesh, and these are very large square holes. The graphics card is pulling in fresh air. I mean, this out here is not blocked off or choked off by the entertainment setup, so I'm not sure why those temperatures are so dang high. And this is just a stock card here. I'm not doing any overclocking or anything. I can also tell you this case is super freaking hot. I mean, it's I can't even touch it for very long. So I think that it's really the CPU to blame, and it's just because we've got that AIO mounted up top there, it's not able to pull in enough fresh air to keep the CPU cool enough, which is why I had to undervolt so massively. But despite that, we're still not getting enough airflow for those temps to drop, the fluid temps especially. And I think as a byproduct of all this warm air just kind of circulating in the case, the graphics card is overheating as well. Maybe not from the front, these fans are pulling in fresh air, but I think from the rear and just the overall heat of the case, it's causing the graphics card to run hotter than it should. So I think we need to rethink the entire build here. Possibly switch to air cooling. I'm not really sure, but something desperately needs to change. Also, yes, I know that this system was never actually activated. It only recently popped up. I thought that I was in the clear, but I need to take care of this. I'll do that as well, don't worry. I practice what I preach. Hey, what you doing in your pink race car? It's pretty styling, huh? Oh, it's another car right there. You got a car inside your car. Check that out. Wow. Wow. Cool. So here is the rig now upstairs, and this case is from Height, for those wondering. There's a lot I really like about it. For starters, all the side panels in this case are pretty much toolless. You saw the front panel earlier, comes off fairly easy. There's no screws to deal with. And then the top panel also is
fairly effortless. You can see that you have ease of access if you need to jump in here and work on something very quickly. It's a piece of cake. You've also got really healthy AIO support in here. I have a 240 mil currently, but you could, I believe, upgrade to a 280, which is pretty phenomenal for a case of this size. There is not a single ounce of space in this case that is unused or just wasted. And that's another thing I really like about the design. The problem, again, stems from where it's positioned. Because it's so small and because I have it in the entertainment setup that I do, this top flow arrangement here I think is partly what is causing our coolant temps to spike so quickly. But I think what I want to do is remove the AIO entirely. I think with the radiator in here and just how thick everything is, there's not a lot of breathing room up top, of course, based on where I placed it, which is my own fault, but also underneath, because once this hot air leaves the radiator, it just kind of gets blown all over the graphics card here and on top of the motherboard. And what I'm thinking we should do instead is maybe like a top flow low profile cooler. Because I've already severely undervolted the CPU, I'm not really too worried about having all that powerful one to begin with. We're probably not going to notice much of a performance difference with that top flow cooler installed. I think I can leave the undervolted settings the way that I currently have them. But this should free up a little bit of space internally in the case and should also, as a byproduct, slightly lower graphics card temperatures since, yeah, there's going to be a bit more room for that air to circulate and escape the sides of the case. Or at least that's the goal. I'm not entirely sure it's going to play out that way. Stripped down a bit, we've got our cooler removed as well as our graphics card. And I am seeing a fair degree of surface level dust, but it should not be blown out of proportion, my friends. This kind of dust here, I mean, this is nothing. I mean, compared to what we usually clean in our PCDC playlist, this is nothing to gawk at all. This is not going to change thermals by any measurable amount. I would wager that we probably won't even see a 1 degree Celsius delta between the clean rig, quote unquote, and the dirty one that you're seeing here, if you even want to call this dirty. The only time dust will really affect thermals to a significant amount, to a measurable amount, I should say, is when it's affecting airflow. Typically, if you have a lot of dust buildup in, say, a front intake filter, that could affect the amount of air moving into the case, which then, in turn, affects the amount of air leaving the case, and a lot of that air leaving the case is hotter, so if it can't leave the case, your components just heat up as a result of all that buildup there. There's not enough circulation, and dust can certainly affect that, but it needs to be extreme. It needs to be a lot of dust for it to make a meaningful impact. The situation that we're in here, where this case is surrounded on all of its sides except for one by wood panels, is a bit similar to that, except replace dust with the wood, and you've got an issue, right? Getting that air in and then getting it out as well. So I'm hoping, again, just by downsizing the cooler, keeping our CPU undervolted, that we'll be able to fix the graphics card overheating issue, and we won't have to worry about coolant overheating as well, because we don't have an AIO anymore. Kind of taking the easy way out. But for long-term stability, which I'm more concerned about in the downstairs living room, this is, I think, our best bet. Now, before I go ham with this electric duster here, which we're going to use to blast all that loose dust in that case, I do want to crank up our air purifier here. This one from Levoit is pretty darn clutch. I'm going to crank it up to the max so that it can help suck up all the dust that's going to float around in this office. Are you ready for a time lapse? I love time lapses. Unfortunately, this one's only going to be like 5 or 6 seconds long, but it's something. See, I told you it'd be quick. Oh, and one more thing about cleaning. You're gonna wanna have a decent vacuum cleaner if you're blowing dust all around your office. I know that's a sin. Again, I should be taking it outside, but we've got Levoit to the rescue with the vacuums as well. And the one I've been using is super dang sweet. This is the Vortex IQ40, and it has a ton of sucking power. You know it's serious when it literally pulls up the carpet during use. 2-stage HEPA filters ensure that the recycled air is clean and keeps allergens down for those especially sensitive. This is just some of the dust I pick up from my office after a deep cleaning segment, so you can imagine just how important having an exceptional vacuum is. Be sure to check out the Levoit Vortex IQ lineup by clicking their sponsor link below. Now we'll clean this thermal paste off, and we'll get things prepped for our new cooler installation, the Noctua NH-L9A, which I've used many times. This thing is not only super tiny, but also packs a heck of a punch. Does this make a lot of sense for a 5800X rig? Absolutely not. You'd ideally want something a bit more powerful, but I'm willing to work within the constraints of the location of the rig and also the fact that I am undervolting the CPU already to sort of kind of compensate for that. This will run fairly quiet, I expect, given the undervolting that I'm doing and the resulting frequency from that. But I'm also going to pair this with 2 intake fans from NZXT. So I've got 2 F140Ps here. They are white. They don't need to be white, but they're white to match the externals of the case. And these 2 are going to be set to intake. I'm going to mount them on the bracket where the radiator originally was. And I think this is going to provide a lot more fresh air, unimpeded. We're not going to have that radiator there to sort of break up the air. And it's not going to be super warm by the time it hits the CPU or the graphics card or the motherboard. Obviously, the cooler will be dumping heat out of it, but I think having a lot more fresh air coming in is going to help as well. We'll get some thermal paste to top the CPU. Don't worry, I'm showing this because, well, some of you don't think it actually happens if it's not on camera. So there you go. Wow, you know, I just realized I tried tightening this thing down without the backplate. I was wondering why it didn't feel right. I don't know why I did that. I don't think I've ever done that before with AM4. There we go. This thing will do. Just provides a bit more of a buffer. And now we can drop the screws back in. Also remember to cross tighten to ensure that the thermal paste has spread correctly across the IHS. Now we're just gonna wiggle in these 2 case fans. Again, these are 140s. They are static pressure fans, so I think this is gonna benefit us in this particular situation. God, I'm trying to get the cables and everything all just perfectly lined up. This thing's getting snagged. Come on, something like this. This is the stuff you guys don't usually see. We don't want to show this on YouTube because it makes us look like nubs. Problem is I am a nub, so I'd just be lying to you if I didn't show this. We've got the cables cleanly routed, or, well, as cleanly as I reasonably could get them. And now you can see from that angle, we have a lot more space to work with here, a lot more breathing room for our CPU. Yes, the cooler has shrunk tremendously, but I think this will help. I might be totally wrong here. I just have a good feeling about this setup. It's a lot less crammed. Obviously, we don't have our graphics card installed yet. That will take up this entire front section. But these fans pulling in unhindered fresh air straight into the CPU here, low profile cooler, looks a lot more healthy with the door closed. And as for our graphics card, minus my fingerprints, this thing actually looks pretty darn clean despite having the dust filter in front of these fans removed for several months of fairly heavy use downstairs. So pretty impressive there. The only thing I won't do that I could to help improve temps a bit more, despite this being a new card, is repasting. It's possible that repasting, replacing the factory stuff, could lower temps a bit. We could also try undervolting the card, but we'll cross those bridges when we come to them, if we come to them. So back in you go, along with this super snug fit, and installation's gonna look a little cringy because, yeah, everything is just so tightly packed together here. There we go, something like that. And then 2 screws at the bottom. And don't forget these. That would not be good. If I can get this one in there. Come on, why is it so stubborn? There we go, finally. And here we are, looking pretty good. Obviously with the side panels off, just wanted to show you one last time here what we're working with. Kind of a coincidence that these 140s I had from NZXT happen to be white, but it works with the rest of the case here. We've got some white RAM. Obviously the Noctua fan isn't really matching much, but we're not gonna see that anyway. Looks really airy. Again, that's the big takeaway from this. You can really see just how much empty space there is in here, and I think that will benefit us in the long run. And to be clear, this entire video is not me trying to knock on this case. I love this case. I think this case is awesome. And in any normal environment with normal surroundings, say on a desk or even below a desk, if you, God forbid, wanted to put it down there, this case would be fine. Airflow would be okay. I mean, given that it's an ITX rig, if you're willing to make a few compromises, including removing, in my testing at least, that front little mesh that was gold before that I did remove for better airflow to the graphics card, you really shouldn't have too many issues in terms of temperatures. I don't have complaints there. It's just a matter of where I've decided to put this. And that's my own fault. Again, I own that. I know that it's not the ideal spot, but I wanted to try to modify this case, modify the build itself and the cooling to work in that kind of environment, because I really like where it is. I like the placement under the TV in the living room. I think it looks really nice. It draws some attention because it is a white frame. And yeah, I just don't want it overheating. It's very loud when it overheats. And we don't really have to worry about IQ anymore, I suppose. But I definitely don't want it just sounding like a helicopter in my living room. That is not desirable. The last thing to do then is wire this back up downstairs and test it out. I'm gonna open the same game I did before. We're gonna have the exact same settings. The BIOS settings shouldn't actually change because we haven't swapped CPUs or anything apart from the cooler in here. So with that all remaining the same, I'm hoping this time around it won't overheat. And if it does overheat, at least it doesn't overheat as quickly. There might be some things we can do to the graphics card. Again, repasting and even undervolting to keep these temps in check. But I don't expect they're gonna affect the CPU as much as they were before. So let's go ahead and give that a shot, and we'll end the video there. So we've got a bit to discuss. Like, ignore the mess. It's freaking messy in here. It is what it is.
This here is our 6800 XT temps again, and you can see, well, it's still extremely toasty. In fact, it was hitting like 106, 107C while we're running this little gaming session here, just like before. And this shouldn't happen. In theory, this shouldn't happen because T-junction kicks in like at around 100, 105, and there should be some sort of limiter here. But it's occasionally peaking above that. You can see 107. That's just not normal. And I realized this isn't actually the temperature I thought it was. We'll talk about that in a second. CPU temps are still pretty toasty, 80 degrees, and we're not under any heavy load for the CPU. So I imagine we will be throttling even more with this chip, and that means we're gonna have to drop vCore even more. It's just, yeah, again, it just comes with the territory. But the good thing is we don't have a helicopter screaming down here anymore because we don't have coolant. That coolant is not overheating, which is not throwing crazy codes in the iCUE software. And that's, yeah, that was one of the big complaints I had. So now people who come over are not gonna freak out and think that I turned on a leaf blower indoors.
So now I've got to, whoops. So now I've opened up Adrenaline software, and this is where the story turns. We realized that we weren't measuring the same temperatures we thought we were for the graphics card.
So this temperature you keep seeing here is actually the junction temperature, and well, that's gonna run a bit higher than your normal package temps or diode temps, whatever this measures. Pretty sure it's one or the other. 89C is much more doable. That's still very toasty, considering we don't really have much impeding the way of fresh air entering this thing. But again, constraints, the fact that the entertainment setup is surrounding 5 of the 6 sides of this case, it is what it is. We're still working within the parameters of this, so I'm not going to complain too much about that. I realize that really, in hindsight, wasn't much of an issue at all. But I am glad that we were at least able to get rid of that annoying helicopter sound. It's still, you know, noticeable. I don't know if you can hear it on camera here. Yeah, I mean, the fans are still churning under that gaming load, but it's not the end of the world, and it's certainly much quieter than it was before.
So yeah, this didn't end the way I thought it would. I figured we'd be sailing into the sunset nice and smooth, all of our problems solved, and it turns out that's just not the case. We've got so much just restriction with where that case is placed that we'll have to do even more tweaking to get things semi not toasty, which I mean, I'm happy the way it is. Yes, it's running super hot, but at least it's nowhere near as loud as before, thanks to the removal of that AIO. With that, you guys can just sulk in my blunder. Let me know in the comment section below what you think, and just all caps me, scream at me, do what you gotta do. It is what it is. It is YouTube, and by this point, I am sort of kind of used to it. It's kind of frustrating, but it's also kind of fun knowing that I can still tinker with things and try to optimize the setup as it is. Maybe I should just punch a bunch of holes throughout the entertainment setup and we'd have better airflow. I don't know. Again, leave those comments down below. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. Give this video a like or a dislike, depending on how you felt, and I will catch you in the next one. My name is Greg. Thanks for chilling with me. Or the opposite of that, because it's actually really toasty in there. Let's go with that.